Hello all. In this video you will see what are the different pricing options for Amazon EC2 and how to launch an EC2 instance using these different pricing options. So the different pricing options are on demand, spot, reserved and savings plan. So on demand is the default option which you should choose when you don't know for how long you are going to use the EC2 instances, what is the kind of workload, what is the kind of size you are going to need, or maybe it's for a temporary usage like for your development testing for or some proof of concept. Then next is spot instances. Spot instances are cheaper in pricing, and AWS sells their unused capacity and allows users to bid a price. And based on the demand in terms of bidding, they decide what they are ready to sell you for. So it's sometimes even from 70% to 90% discounted rate compared to on demand. The only thing is that the instance might get deleted if like AWS needs that capacity back. So you should use these kind of instances only if your application can withstand any interruptions in workload. So meaning if this instance gets deleted, it is possible for your application to be launched on a new instance and continue from there. Okay. Next is reserved. So if you know exactly how much capacity you are going to need, what size of the instance you are going to need, or you have some idea in term and you are ready to commit for a longer term like 1 year or a 3 year term, then you get a discounted price. And however, if you don't use that, still you have to pay for that entire term. Okay, so that is the result. Savings plan is slightly similar to result, but in that instead of paying for the full term for the full amount, you commit for a certain usage. Like you will spend X amount of dollars per hour, and that commitment you can give for 1 year or 3 year. So that way you don't have to actually define what type of instance and what size of instance, etc. You only commit for the amount of dollars you are going to pay per hour, and then you commit it for this term. So we'll see these options, and then we will also see dedicated host and dedicated instances later. So on demand is basically the default method of launching an EC2 instance. So if you log into AWS console, and then if you go to EC2 and then choose your region, uh, to launch on-demand instances, you simply go to launch instance, select the AMI of your choice. Say for example, I choose Amazon Linux, choose the size, whatever you want. And so for now, I will just accept all the defaults, and maybe I'll give a tag as on demand just to know that which instance is which. Select all the different configurations and settings for the instance and launch. So this is how you launch an on-demand EC2 instance. So on-demand EC2 instance, when launched, you can keep it for as long as you want, and whenever you don't want, you can stop the instance so that you don't get billed for the compute, but then you can start it at a later point if you want. So you can stop for temporary when you don't want the capacity or when you don't want the application to run, but you want to continue at some point in later point in time. In that case, you choose to stop this instance. So you can go to instance state and stop. If you don't want this EC2 instance anymore, then you can simply terminate it. So when you terminate an instance, it's a permanent deletion of the instance, and like if you choose also the root disk and etc. So you cannot recover from a terminated instance. However, if you have stopped the instance, it is shut down. So you can start it at any time. So this is the on-demand instance. Now to launch a spot instance, you can either go to launch an instance, and there also you have got an option to launch it as a spot, or you can go to the spot request option, and here you can request for a spot instance. So here you can choose the AMI that you want. You can give the details like what key pair should be used. Then if you want to customize what is the root disk, or you want to add any volumes, what security groups should be attached. So all these you can configure, and then what you can do is you can define how much total capacity you need, how many instances you want, and then whether AWS should maintain these many instances, so that if say one of the spot instances is terminated, is deleted because AWS wants some capacity, then should AWS launch a new instance in its place, right? Maybe in with some different instance size, which AWS does not need to claim back. So you can choose what instance sizes you want, or you want to allow AWS to choose from. So that way AWS can maintain the target capacity. Even if they delete some spot instance, they can launch it. Or you can define what is the max cost you are willing to pay. So you can select this option and set the max cost you are ready to pay for that particular instance size. So we'll set this a bit later. I'll show the other options. You can select in which network and subnet availability zone do you want to launch this instance. And you can now either specify in terms of capacity. So you say, okay, I need an instance of this much CPU, this much memory, and AWS will automatically select the instance sizes, types and sizes that match this. Or you can manually define which instance types and sizes you want AWS to select the spot instance from. So you can keep a pool, so that if an instance is not available within the infrastructure of this type, then AWS can launch in the one of the other available types. Okay, so that's one option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all this, and instead I'm going to choose the T2.micro because that's the cheapest. And as you can see, this is available for up to 70% savings. Okay, so the spot price, current spot price going on is this much, and that's around 70% cheaper than the on demand. So I will choose this as the instance type. So when you choose only one instance type or size, then if that is not available, no instance gets launched. But if you select multiple, then amongst whatever is available, AWS can launch your instance to match your request. And there's also an option to see how much is the cost going on and so on. So I will show that in a bit. Then what is the allocation strategy? Do you want AWS to maintain the capacity, or to choose from the lowest price? So if you define a price, then Ignio will choose from the amongst the instances which are available for the lowest price. Else it will choose based on the capacity. So these are the different settings that you choose. And after having seen what is the spot price for this, then I can decide what is it that I am ready to pay as max. So for example, I am ready to pay $0.004 per hour because it's 0.0037. So I will give some leeway, so that even if there's a demand increase and the price increases slightly, I am still ready to pay slightly higher, and my instance will not get deleted. So the instance gets deleted if the spot price crosses what you are ready to pay for, then your instance gets deleted, and then you can launch the EC2 instance. Now, when you launch, initially the request will be in submitted state. And now, depending on whether AWS has extra capacity in that specified region for the specified type and size, depending on that, your instance will either get launched, or it may not get launched at all. So now we can see the instance has got launched. So if I go here, there's one more instance that has got launched. Let me name it as Spot. So it's not different than the on-demand instance in terms of the other characteristics. And next is result. So reserved instances, basically it's not a type of an instance like on demand. You say, okay, I am ready to pay the full on demand price. With spot, I am ready to pay the spot price. Reserved instances is just a type of billing. So you purchase some reservation, and against that reservation you can launch instances. So when the bill is settled at the end of the month, AWS will see how much is your usage, and in the for that usage they will apply this discounted rate. So for whatever capacity you have reserved, say for example you purchase for a specified instance size. So let's say you say that I am going willing to pay for an entire year for T3 dot large instance, and suppose you launch three T3 dot large instances which you run for an entire year. One of that instance will be charged at the discounted rate. The remaining two will be charged at the on-demand rate. And again, it's not this straightforward. So AWS checks your entire usage, and if any usage fits this entire year's reservation, they will apply that discount. For that remaining, they will charge at the on demand. So this is how you purchase reserved instances. You can select what type of instance you are willing to pay, whether it's Linux or Windows, or which operating system. Do you want to reserve it for 1 year or 3 years? And again, here there are three payment options. You can either pay fully upfront, or you can partially pay upfront and then pay kind of a per hour dollar rate, or you don't pay anything upfront and you always pay a dollar per hour rate. So obviously, if you pay everything upfront, that is the cheapest option. The next cheapest is partial upfront, and the lowest, or rather the most costly amongst reserved, is the no upfront. So I'll not purchase reserved instances. They are quite, what you can say, you end up for a complete 1 year term. Even if you don't launch any EC2 instance, you will be paying that term. So I'm not going to launch it. Next is savings plan. So when you have selected savings plan, then you can go ahead and purchase a savings plan. So you can define the duration as 1 year or 3 year, and you can specify how much you are ready to pay. So say for example, $10 per hour you are ready to commit for a payment. And do you want to pay it all upfront or partial upfront or no upfront? So you have these multiple options. So you can choose how much you are ready to pay full upfront fee. So suppose I am ready to pay $1,000 upfront. So here it says minimum is this. So these, like, you have these different options you can choose. If you can also choose no upfront, and then you can give a schedule from this date to this date you want to commit for the payment. So this is similar to reserved instances. However, in reserved instances you commit to pay for an entire capacity for 1 year. So like C5 dot large instance for an entire year at the discounted rate. Whereas in savings plan, you commit for some dollar per hour, commit for this payment for an entire year or 3 year. So these are the different payment methods, pricing options. So on demand, spot, reserved, and savings plan. There are also two other options called as dedicated host and dedicated instances. So if you do not want, so what happens is when you launch an EC2 instance, by default, the host, the underlying physical server, may launch EC2 instances from other AWS customers also. So sometimes you do not want to share the underlying host and you are willing to pay slightly more to have a dedicated host for you. So this could be if you have kind of licensing requirements where you want to license an entire host, or there are some regulatory requirements that from your like the government rules, or based on the business you are operating. If there are regulations that you should operate on an host which is not shared with any other customer. So in such cases, you can choose to purchase and lease an entire host for you, and then you can launch as many EC2 instances as the capacity of the host allows. So you always pay for the entire charges for the host, and you don't pay separately for the EC2 instances. Obviously, you can launch only those many instances as the total capacity of the host. So this is one option. Second option is if you want dedicated hardware, but you don't want to completely purchase or completely lease the entire host. So you want EC2 instances to be launched on a dedicated infrastructure without leasing the entire host. So in that case, EC2 instance, when you launch with this option, AWS will pick a host which is not shared with any other customers and launch your EC2 instance. And because AWS is now dedicating one host for you, they will charge you a per host fee. So it's like $2 per hour as a standard rate for leasing, or rather for the dedicated infrastructure, plus the EC2 instance charges. So this is the dedicated instance option. Dedicated host option is you pay for the entire host, you don't pay separately for the EC2 instances. So for this, what you can do is on your EC2 console, you will see this option of dedicated hosts, and you can allocate a dedicated host. So say for example, and again, this is not available in the free tier, so you may not want to launch it. You choose the instance family. Say for example, I choose M5 as the family for the dedicated host. So then I will be able to launch any M5 related instances. So this way AWS calculates what should be the host capacity based on the type of instance that I choose. And then you choose in which availability zone the dedicated host should be launched and how many dedicated hosts you want, and then you can allocate. Okay, so it seems I do not have current quota in M5. So let me, I think I have this quota available in, I believe, C5. Let me check. Yeah. So there are service quotas, and I do not have quota to use M5. So if I need dedicated host in the M5 type, I need to raise a support ticket, and then AWS will approve and then increase my quota. So I had increased for the C5 type. So now this dedicated instance is available for my use. And if I see the details, you can see that a host with up to 72 virtual CPU is dedicated for me. So it has 36 cores, and because it will have multiple threads, 2 threads per core, I have 72 virtual CPUs available for me. So once I dedicated host, then I can go and launch EC2 instances. So the way I launched an on demand, and while launching this, so now I can choose, let's say, an M5 type of C5 type of an instance. Suppose I choose C5 large. Now I can choose on which dedicated host I want to launch my instance. So I can choose the tenancy. So where is the tenancy option? Yeah. So under tenancy, I can choose to run on a dedicated host. Okay, so this is the option where you can choose which host you want to run it on. And if you have purchased multiple hosts, you can again define on which host it should be placed. So for example, on one host, you have purchased an Oracle licensing. So any EC2 instances that you want to launch, you would want to launch it on that host for which you have purchased Oracle license for the entire host. So this way, you can gain from better licensing, as well as you can control where you want to launch your instance while it is run as a dedicated host. So I can choose the host over here. If you don't want, so suppose you have multiple hosts and you want AWS to automatically choose amongst them, you can keep auto placement, or if you want, you can choose a specific host. And here you will also see how many CPUs are currently utilized out of the total. So that way, while launching also, you have an idea. And then I can go and choose the options as uh, we have seen before. So I'll say dedicated host instance, and I can launch it the same way. So like I said, there are additional charges for this. So this is not available in the free tier. And now you can see two virtual CPUs are consumed because I launched a C5.large which has two CPUs. So this way you can launch EC2 instances on specific dedicated hosts. You can also launch EC2 instance as dedicated without purchasing the hosts. So for example, if I now terminate this EC2 instance, and after this I release the dedicated host also, still I'll be able to launch dedicated instances, but at that time I will be charged a $2 per hour host fee if I do not if I have not purchased any dedicated host specifically. So now this instance that I had launched on my dedicated host is terminated. I can release this host. So when I release this host, I stop paying for the host. Okay. So as long as my host is there, I am paying for the host whether I launch EC2 instances on that or not. Okay. So this is a dedicated host. Now let me launch a dedicated instance without having a dedicated host. So again, and some of the instance types you cannot launch as dedicated instances, like for example, I believe T2 and T3. So let me choose the C5 large itself. It's the tenancy option here. So in the tenancy, now you can choose to run it as a dedicated instance instead of launching it on a dedicated host. So if you choose this, then you don't pay for an entire dedicated host, but you pay for a $2 per hour fee. So now my dedicated instance is getting launched. And to launch this, AWS will take out one of their unused hosts and dedicate it for me, irrespective of whether I consume the entire host capacity or not. I can launch even just a single instance, but obviously I'm paying a $2 per hour rate for that host. Whereas if you purchase a dedicated host, you are paying a lot more, but then you can launch multiple instances to consume the entire capacity. So this is how you can launch a dedicated instance. Now the options that I showed for dedicated host, again, this is the on-demand option for dedicated host, wherein I had purchased it and then I was able to release it. So whenever I need it, I pay for it. If I don't need, I release it. I stop paying for that. For dedicated hosts also, you have the reserved instances option. So when you can also pay dedicated reserved instances. So you choose for an entire 1 year or 3 year duration to pay for an entire dedicated host, and you get a discounted price. Now, when you want to delete your spot instance, if you delete it from the instances tab, and if you had chosen the spot option of target capacity instead of pricing, then what happens is, in place of this deleted instance, AWS will launch another spot instance automatically for you from the chosen sizes. So that's why instead of deleting it from here, to be on a safer side, you should go to the spot requests option, select your spot request, and from the actions, you can choose to cancel the request. And then it will ask you whether you want to terminate the instances also. So that way, your instance is automatically deleted when you cancel your spot request. So these are the different options. So we saw the on demand for workload when you don't exactly know for how long you need or what is the kind of usage pattern. Spot to purchase at a cheaper rate for AWS unused capacity, but these instances could be deleted. So ensure your application can work around these cases. Reserve, if you are ready to pay for an entire 1 year and 3 year and pay the entire amount. Savings plan, if you don't want to pay the entire amount but you are ready to pay, like you know that your usage is up to certain dollars per hour, then you can commit for that payment for 1 year or 3 year, and then the dedicated host and the dedicated instances option. So I have come to the billing tab. So you can search for billing, and inside billing you can go and check your current bill, and just want to show how the dedicated instances and dedicated host are charged. So if I go to the Elastic Compute Cloud and I had launched a dedicated host in this region, the Mumbai region. So when you launch a dedicated host, then the billing that you get is for the usage of the dedicated host. So for example, I had used it for 0 0.1 hours, 0.104 hours, then I am charged 0.35 for an entire dedicated host, right? However, if you launch a dedicated instance instead of a dedicated host, then you are charged for the dedicated instance plus you are charged a $2 per hour flat fee for the specified region. So in this case, for the Mumbai region, I am charged a $2 per hour flat fee. It is not prorated, meaning even if you use for a partial hour, you will be charged a complete $2 fee plus this. So this is what you get when you launch a dedicated instance, and this is what you get when you launch a dedicated host. So you pay for the entire host, and then you don't have to pay separately for any instances on this. But if you don't take a dedicated host, then you have to pay for the instance hour plus a flat fee for the dedicated host. So those are the options for from the pricing perspective. So thanks for watching.